The wind howled through the jagged crests of the Vale range, each gust sweeping across the frozen valleys like the breath of some ancient, slumbering god. Snow scoured the landscape in eddies and spirals, revealing and concealing the path in the same motion. Captain Elira Voss stepped forward, her armored boots sinking with a crunch into the soft crust of ice. The HUD in her visor flickered in the low temperatures, rendering sensor pings in glitchy spurts. Atmosphere stable, radiation minimal, life signs inconclusive. Her AI companion, Kara, reported in a clipped tone. Elira adjusted the strap of her rifle and glanced up at the narrowing sky. The storm was clearing, but the silence beneath it remained unsettling. They had called this place uninhabitable, a dead zone. The last team sent to investigate the anomaly never reported back. No distress signal, no comms, just a wave of static and a pulsing signature from beneath the ice that refused to go dark. Elira wasn't new to walking into ghosts. She'd spent a decade threading the void between lost colonies and forgotten relics. But this place, it felt different. Not empty. Watching. She moved with calculated purpose through the pass, her breath steaming against the inside of her mask. Intricate, frost-covered ridges flanked her on both sides, glinting like teeth in the dim sunlight. Her fingers flexed over the weapon grip unconsciously. Kara's voice chimed again. We're closing in. 50 meters to anomaly origin. The terrain dipped suddenly into a bowl-shaped depression. At its center, half buried in ancient snow and stone, a structure protruded, smooth, metallic, and unmistakably alien. Its surface shimmered faintly with an iridescent pulse, like veins beneath skin. Elira approached slowly, her heartbeat steady despite the adrenaline creeping into her limbs. The object looked like a monolith, but her scans showed hollowness inside. A chamber, maybe? She knelt beside it, brushing off ice to reveal strange etchings, curved glyphs that shifted as her gaze passed over them. These symbols matched the Vale-type artifacts from the Xhor-Valen archives, Kara noted. Estimated age, 30,000 years minimum. She reached into her belt pouch and withdrew a small prism-shaped device. The relic, her mother's final research project before vanishing in the island expanse. A legacy of obsession, a half-mad dream no one else had dared pursue. Until Elira. The moment she held the relic near the glyphs, the symbols flared to life in azure light, spreading across the monolith in rippling waves. Snow melted around her in an instant. The air grew thick, charged. Then the growl came, low, guttural, and too large to be anything natural. Elira rose, weapon raised, scanning the surroundings. Nothing. Another growl. Closer. Then it stepped into view, emerging from the far side of the depression like a nightmare stitched from ice and bone. Towering, fur white as the snows around it. Its eyes burned with twin cores of blue fire. Horns curled back from its head like obsidian blades, and its breath misted in great plumes as it snarled. Kara's voice faltered. Unidentified life form, hostile classification, initiating defense mode. The creature lunged. Elira barely dodged, rolling behind the monolith as claws as long as swords raked where her head had been. Snow exploded into the air. She fired, 2 quick bursts that impacted the beast's shoulder. It recoiled, more out of irritation than pain. It circled, muscles rippling beneath its hide, fangs bared in a snarl of challenge. And then she felt it. The relic in her hand grew warm, almost pulsing. The creature paused, its eyes locked on the prism. It sniffed the air, and something changed. The rage in its gaze dulled, replaced by confusion recognition. She stood slowly, breath ragged, not dropping the relic. The creature took a step back. Another. Then, with slow deliberation, it bowed its head and sank to one knee, if such a thing could kneel. It lowered its massive form until its snout nearly touched the snow. Elira didn't move. Her body screamed to run, but something ancient, something in her blood held her still. A tremor passed through her, not fear, but memory. The wind fell silent, and in the quiet, Kara whispered, "Captain, I believe it knows you." The creature's breath was steady now, its eyes never leaving hers. She lowered her weapon, step by step, approaching the beast. Its body was coiled, but not aggressive, more like reverent. She stopped inches away, staring into its luminous eyes. They were deep, fractal, like starlight trapped in a mirror. In that moment, she felt it. A thought, not her own, wordless, primal, a call from long ago, and within it, a single impression. Protector. The relic in her hand dimmed, its energy spent, or perhaps transferred. She pressed her palm to the side of the creature's head. It closed its eyes. "You're not a monster," she said quietly. "You're a sentinel, a guardian left behind." But guarding what? She looked back at the monolith, at the glyphs still glowing faintly. The answer wasn't just in the machine. It was beneath it, or beyond it. But before she could act, the ground beneath them shuddered with a low rumble. Her visor buzzed with proximity alerts. Something else was coming, something that didn't kneel. And this time, it wasn't alone. Elira stood frozen, her breath shallow, heart drumming against the inside of her ribs like a trapped animal. The tremors faded beneath her boots, but the tension in the air lingered like the static hum before a lightning strike. Her gloved hand still rested on the creature's fur, dense and bristling with coiled strength, yet it remained motionless beneath her touch. The beast's eyes opened again, burning blue and bright, but there was no malice in them now. Only purpose. "Kara," Elira whispered, "give me a biological readout on this thing. Anything." The AI hesitated, unable to parse genetic structure with current instruments. "Composition is non-terrestrial, but the relic, Captain, it shares over 60% DNA alignment with you." She blinked. "What are you saying?" "I believe the creature recognizes you not merely as an heir to the Xhor-Valen bloodline, but as a direct descendant, possibly engineered to do so." She stepped back, eyes wide. "That's impossible. My family line. We're Earthborn. Colonist class, 22nd generation." There was a pause. "Your mother's records suggest otherwise." Elira clenched her jaw. The words cut deeper than expected. She hadn't thought of her mother in years. Dr. Cira Voss, xenogeneticist, exiled from the academy for tampering with restricted alien genomes. A brilliant mind spiraling toward madness. She disappeared when Elira was 12, vanishing into the cold edge of space on a vessel with no return log. In her final message, a voice fragment encrypted and forgotten until now, Cira had said only one thing. "One day, you'll find the key. When you do, don't run from it. Embrace what you are." Until today, Elira had dismissed it as delusion. But the relic in her palm glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat, and this beast, this impossible creature, was bowing to her as if she were royalty returned. "What are you?" she asked it, voice barely more than a breath. The creature made no sound, but something passed between them again. A pressure in the air, a whisper in the blood, a memory not her own. Flashes, stone towers carved into glaciers, beings of light encased in exosuits of living metal, rituals under twin moons. And then war, fire, betrayal. A final command burned into the DNA of 1,000 bioengineered guardians. "Protect the line. Kneel to the blood." Elira staggered back, breaking the connection. Snow crunched beneath her as she tried to steady her thoughts. This wasn't just history. It was embedded in her. A legacy older than her species. Kara spoke softly, as if not to disturb the silence. Captain, we must assume you were modified at the genetic level. Possibly in utero. My mother did this, she said aloud. She must have found the vaults. Samples. Xhor-Valen code, and she grafted it into me. Yes, a dangerous act. But perhaps she wasn't trying to create power. She may have been trying to preserve a species, or prevent one from awakening. The tremor returned, subtler this time, a warning rather than a threat. The creature turned its head sharply, ears twitching. It growled, low and guttural, but not at her. Something stirred beyond the ridge. Time to move, Elira said. The beast, no, the sentinel, stood and waited as she collected her gear. Without a word, it turned and began to walk. She followed, footsteps light despite the weight of what she had just learned. Together they moved through the icy ravine, deeper into the frostlands, led not by path, but by instinct. Or perhaps something older. Hours passed. They reached a canyon, its walls sheer and polished by centuries of wind. Strange symbols marked the stone, some glowing faintly, others barely visible beneath the frost. The sentinel paused at a flat face of stone, then placed a clawed hand against it. The wall shimmered, then dissolved like mist. A hidden passage opened. Inside, the air changed, warmer, laced with minerals and something else. Ozone, almost electrical. The cavern was enormous, its walls embedded with bioluminescent veins of crystal that pulsed with soft light. And at its heart, another structure, towering, more ornate than the first. Etchings wound around it like circuitry married to bone. The sentinel bowed again and stepped aside, letting Elira approach. She neared the structure slowly. The relic in her hand brightened with every step. When she reached the threshold, the symbols erupted in cascading waves of energy. Panels shifted. A doorway opened. Within the chamber lay a sarcophagus, sleek, alien, and sealed with glyphs. Kara's voice was hushed. Captain, we are standing in the last known shrine of the Xhor-Valen line. This is not just a vault. It's a genetic sanctum. Elira ran her fingers along the sarcophagus, feeling the hum beneath the surface. Suddenly, an alarm pinged. Multiple life forms inbound, Kara warned. They're armed. Scavenger's signature detected. Red spire. Elira turned sharply. They followed me? They must have intercepted our landing vector. Estimated contact, 5 minutes. The sentinel growled, rising to its full height. Its fur bristled, eyes narrowing. They'll try to take the relic, she said. And the creature, Kara added. They won't understand what it is. They'll see a weapon. Elira stared at the sarcophagus. She had no idea what lay inside. Ancestor, monster, or god, but she knew this place couldn't fall into the wrong hands. She looked to the sentinel. Will you fight? The creature met her eyes and let out a sound that could only be described as a vow. Then the cave mouth exploded inward, raining stone and snow. Figures poured through, armor-clad, masks gleaming, rifles raised. Shouts echoed. Target the beast. Gunfire roared. Elira ducked and returned fire, her shots precise, cold. The sentinel moved like a force of nature, fast despite its size, claws tearing through steel, jaws crushing bone. Blast struck its hide, but it pressed forward unstoppable. The scavengers didn't stand a chance. In the chaos, Elira felt the relic in her hand shift. It pulled toward the sarcophagus, light flaring to full intensity, as if reacting to the bloodshed, or warning of something worse. Then she heard a new sound, low, rhythmic, pulsing from beneath the vault. The structure was waking up. Kara's voice rose in urgency. Captain, The sanctum is responding to your presence, but it's also reacting to the violence. I fear we've triggered a failsafe. The light in the sarcophagus turned red. The sentinel stopped mid-charge, howling toward the ceiling. Elira's heart dropped. What do we just wake up? The cavern shook, sending shards of crystal tumbling from the high ceilings. Energy arced across the sarcophagus in wild flashes of blue and red, casting erratic shadows on the stone walls. Elira staggered as the floor beneath her quaked again, this time more violently. Her visor struggled to stabilize the visuals, overloaded with power surges and distortion. And yet, the relic in her hand remained constant, its glow synchronizing now not with her heartbeat, but with something deeper, older. The sentinel stood rigid beside her, muscles coiled, eyes fixed on the sarcophagus as it pulsed with life. The air had turned electric, thick with tension. Kara's voice was strained, modulating to compensate for interference. "Captain, something is coming online beneath the chamber. A secondary system, possibly an AI or a security construct. It's ancient, but not dormant anymore." A low thrumming rose from below. It resonated in Elira's bones, as if the mountain itself was waking. The red spire scavengers lay broken across the cavern. Some fled when the sarcophagus first began to stir. Others didn't make it past the sentinel's fury. But their intrusion had done more than threaten lives. It had broken the equilibrium. Elira stepped forward, every instinct screaming against it. Still, she pressed the relic to the central glyph on the sarcophagus. The energy surged, the glow intensifying until the relic dissolved in her palm, disintegrated into motes of light that were pulled into the glyphs like iron filings to a magnet. The sarcophagus split open with a sound like a breath after centuries of silence. Inside lay not a corpse, nor a statue, but a figure encased in translucent armor, sleek, elegant, unlike anything she had seen. The being's skin was silvered, almost liquid, and its eyes, when they opened, burned with twin flares of white light. It didn't move at first. Then slowly, deliberately, it sat up, as if time itself had returned to its rhythm. Elira didn't speak. She couldn't. Her voice caught in her throat at the sheer gravity of the moment. The figure turned its gaze to her, then to the sentinel. Recognition flickered, and then it rose. It towered above her, not in bulk, but in presence. A being shaped by design, not evolution. Too perfect to be natural, too purposeful to be chance. Its voice, when it finally came, was neither male nor female, neither harsh nor soft. It was layered, like chimes woven through thunder. "You were the blood of the Forsaken." Elira swallowed. "I carry what was given." "What was hidden?" The being tilted its head slightly. "You should not exist." The sentinel moved forward then, placing itself between them. A growl rumbled low in its chest, but the being raised a hand, and the beast fell silent, not cowed, but attentive. Kara, speaking low in Elira's ear, translated in real time. "This is one of the prime architects, genetic engineers of the Xhor-Valen line. The last, by the scan's estimate. It was never dead, only sealed." The architect turned to her again. "Why have you come?" "I didn't mean to wake you," Elira said. "I came to find answers. About my mother. About who I am. You are a mistake." The word struck like a blow, but she didn't flinch. "Maybe," she said, "but that doesn't change the fact that I'm here. And I think you've been waiting for someone like me." The architect moved then, stepping down from the sarcophagus platform and approaching slowly. "You speak with the fire of the old blood, but you are deluded, a chimera of stolen code and reckless ambition." "My mother thought she was saving something," Elira said. "She saw the future, didn't she? She saw this place dying." The line ended by choice, The architect replied, "Our kind chose extinction over corruption. Your presence violates that sacrifice." Behind them, the relic's light now spread through the chamber, illuminating more than just symbols. Patterns emerged, maps, diagrams, fragments of history encoded in walls and air. She saw visions again, cities of ice and light, the fall, the betrayal, a warning. "They weren't wiped out by time," she whispered. "You were attacked." The architect paused. "They came for your power. They feared you," Elira continued. "So you sealed yourselves away, left sentinels behind. Not to survive," the architect said quietly, "to ensure nothing remained." Another quake rippled through the floor. The chamber groaned. From deeper within the mountain, a new sound rose, mechanical, jagged, a grinding roar that didn't belong to nature. Kara's voice turned cold. "Incoming heat signatures. 306. Drilling craft. Modified. Private contractor class. Heavily armed." Elira's fists clenched. "Another team? Possibly. Or something worse. They're not scavengers." The architect turned toward the sound, eyes narrowing. "They followed your signal. They'll take everything," Elira said. "They won't stop at you." The sentinel growled in agreement, claws scratching stone. "I won't let them," she added. For a moment, the architect said nothing. Then, to her surprise, it placed one hand over her chest. Not threatening, measuring. The heat of its palm soaked through the armor to her skin. "You have no right," it said. "And yet, you carry the last key. The code, twisted though it is, remains true." "What does that mean?" "It means you are now the fulcrum." Another tremor. The architect looked to the walls. Symbols flared red. "They've activated a failsafe deeper inside," Kara said. "Something designed to collapse the vault if accessed by force. If they breach that lower chamber," Elira said, "this whole mountain will come down." The architect turned to her. "Then you must decide, escape or ascend." Elira felt something ignite in her chest. Not just fear, not just purpose. Legacy. "Tell me how to stop it." The architect raised its hand again, and from its palm emerged a glowing thread of light. It floated toward her, curling like smoke, and entered her body through the chest. Her vision burned white. In that instant, knowledge flooded her. Structures, fail-safe nodes, override codes embedded in bone, in breath. Her mother hadn't just given her DNA. She had encoded her with access. She dropped to one knee, overwhelmed. The sentinel nuzzled her shoulder, anchoring her. "I can do it," she said, voice raw. "I can shut it down." "Then go," the architect said. "We will hold the line. But do not argue with what is already chosen." Elira rose, heart thundering, the world sharper now. Clear. Behind her, the vault's secondary doors began to grind open, revealing a passageway into the mountain's core. Light pulsed at its end, gold and red, like the heart of a star. She turned to the sentinel. "Come." The creature moved beside her, loyal and silent. She looked one last time at the architect. "If I survive," she said, "you'll see why the line shouldn't end." Without waiting for an answer, Elira ran into the depths, the sentinel at her side, and the storm of metal and fire behind her closing in. The corridor narrowed as Elira plunged deeper into the mountain's core, every footstep echoing like a war drum against the ancient walls. The light that guided her pulsed in rhythm with her own breath, as though the mountain itself now recognized her. Beside her, the sentinel's movement was soundless, yet every so often it glanced at her with those piercing blue eyes, no longer just a guardian, but a companion bound by fate and blood. Sweat clung to her brow despite the cold. Every inch of her body ached. the mental weight of the architect's knowledge bearing down on her. It wasn't just data she'd received. It was memory, pain, and millennia of loss compressed into symbols and instincts she barely understood. But she had no choice. There was no turning back. The mountain's failsafe was active, and unless she reached the core and stopped it, the entire structure and everything within would be reduced to ash and myth. Behind them, the tremors increased. Dust spiraled down from the ceiling in fine, constant streams. She could hear distant gunfire now, the shriek of plasma cutters against ancient alloy. The intruders had breached the outer chamber. The architect and its few remaining defenses wouldn't hold them long. Ahead, the corridor opened into a circular chamber bathed in golden light. A towering spire rose from the center, surrounded by 3 concentric rings carved into the floor. Each ring bore thousands of glyphs, glowing with a sickly red hue. In the heart of the spire, suspended in a fluid-like energy, was the core, a crystalline lattice, humming with unbearable power. Elira stepped forward, and the moment her foot crossed the threshold, the room responded. The rings shifted, rotating counter to each other, and a low tone rang out, a call and a challenge. Kara's voice came through, fragmented by interference. "Captain, this is it. Key integration required. Override at the central axis. But you must bind yourself. Permanently." She already knew. She'd seen it in the visions. The override wasn't just a switch. It was a sacrifice. Only someone with the encoded legacy, someone of the forbidden blood, could interface with the lattice. But doing so would link them irrevocably to the system. She would become part of the core, sustaining its balance, forever tied to its fate. The sentinel stepped in front of her suddenly, growling at the spire. Its body was tense, as if sensing what was to come. "No," Elira whispered. "This is my burden. You were meant to protect it, not bear it." But the creature didn't move. It stared at her, then at the core and back again. Then, slowly, it lowered itself to one knee. She paused, breath catching. It was not submission. It was permission. The final key was not just her blood. It was her choice. Elira stepped around the sentinel and placed her hand on the first ring. The glyphs surged beneath her fingers, reacting immediately. Symbols danced, the room darkened, and a single voice, her mother's, spoke within her mind. "If you're hearing this, Elira, then I failed to protect you from what you are. But perhaps I succeeded in preparing you for who you must become." Tears welled in her eyes, unbidden. "I gave you life knowing it might cost you everything. You are more than legacy. You are renewal. Let them remember that even among the ashes, stars can rise." The second ring ignited. Her bones ached. The knowledge twisted within her, demanding expression, alignment, sacrifice. Her skin shimmered faintly with the same iridescent glow she'd seen on the architect. She wasn't fully human anymore. She never had been. She reached the spire. A pedestal extended from its base, shaped to receive her palm. She pressed her hand down. Pain erupted. Not physical, existential. Her mind fractured across timelines, possibilities, echoes of futures that could be, futures that had died. She saw entire civilizations crumble. She saw the Xhor-Valen in their prime, soaring cities, endless knowledge, the beauty of balance. She saw their fall, their choice to erase themselves before greed could twist their creations. And she saw her mother, alone, desperate, refusing to let that knowledge die with them. Then she saw herself, not as she was, but as she would become. The core accepted her. The override initialized. The ring slowed. And then, stillness. The red faded from the glyphs. The sick hum in the walls stopped. The ground beneath her ceased trembling. Above, in the outer vaults, the architect felt the change. It turned toward the encroaching mercenaries, now storming through the chamber, weapons raised. But before they could fire, the sentinel emerged from the corridor, roaring with primal fury. Time slowed. The creature struck with a grace and brutality unmatched, tearing through armored invaders as if they were paper. The architect moved behind it, summoning energy from the walls, using the structure itself as a weapon. But the core no longer burned toward destruction. Elira stood within the spire, breath slow, steady. The chamber had quieted. Around her, data flowed, not in streams, but in language. The mountain spoke to her, and she understood it. The failsafe had been disabled. The mountain was no longer a tomb. It was a beacon. Kara's voice returned, clearer now. Signal stabilizing. Planetary net uplink restored. You did it, Elira. You shut it down. She smiled faintly. Not shut down. Awakened. The sentinel returned, bloodied and limping. Its eyes met hers. Then it lay beside the pedestal, protective to the last. She placed her hand on its head gently. We made it. Outside, the mercenaries retreated, what few remained. The architect stood watch at the threshold of the chamber, neither triumphant nor angry, merely still, as though honoring the truth of what had just occurred. You did what none of you could, it said, voice echoing from within her now as well. You chose preservation over power. I chose life, Elira replied. The architect nodded once, then stepped back into shadow. Its form shimmered and slowly dissolved, its essence passing into the walls. It had fulfilled its purpose. For a long time, there was only silence. Then, the mountain pulsed once, bright and pure. Far above, satellites realigned. Distant outposts detected the signal. Across the star systems, dormant, listening posts stirred as the legacy of the Xhor-Valen, once thought extinct, flared again into existence. Not as a warning, but as a call. Elira sat beside the core, body weakened but mind sharpened. The sentinel leaned against her, a gentle pressure of warmth and presence. Kara's voice, soft now, asked, "What do we do next?" Elira closed her eyes, feeling the beat of the mountain, of the stars beyond. The burden wasn't gone. It had simply changed shape. We rebuild, she said. She wasn't just the last of a forgotten people. She was the first of something new,